Good morning. I am so excited to be back with another incredible woman and mom. I am joined today by Britini Evans. Britini, say hello.
Good morning. Good morning. So happy to be here.
Good morning. This is such a pleasure to be able to have this discussion with you. Obviously, we've known each other for a little bit, and through our conversations, I've grown to really just admire the entire journey that you're on. So, the purpose of this conversation is really to share more about you, your son, and honestly, just to teach people like me and like the friends and families around you how best to support someone like yourself. And so we might get into some deeper topics. And the hope is that you walk away with a sense of you sharing a little bit more of your story, your family's story, and also sharing and acknowledging the things that we can be doing as people, as supporters, as communities to better be there during life's major life moments. So, with that, Brittany, I'd love for you to share at first just a little bit more about you and your story and your family.
Sure. So thank you so much for having me. I have two little boys, my husband and I. We live right outside of Raleigh, North Carolina in Clayton. Our boys are 13 months apart. James and Isaiah. Isaiah's our very medically complex little guy. We had no idea. My brother, who had some similarities, not fully, but some similarities, disabilities, and medical needs as well, actually passed away while I was pregnant with Isaiah. So Isaiah was born, started with his first seizure right before he was a month old, and then the medical needs just continued. And even still, we just a month ago got another diagnosis, and he's 5, another chronic diagnosis. So I say it really just has continued the journey. And it really, when you say a roller coaster, that's really what it's been. We've had periods that have been a little bit calmer, but every day has been really filled with something. But that kind of cliche of he's amazing. Like he really, has really just persevered through all of it. And then I see my other son who I was the older sibling of a younger brother with disabilities and complex medical needs. And I see that so much in my older son James, and just he's amazing too. And so there's been so much, I've learned so much about that grief and joy can really coexist. And that is kind of the heart of what I feel like on a day-to-day basis. It's so hard to see your child go through so much, but at the same time feel so much joy that one, that you're able to be their parent, but then also, experience all these things. So, um,
So, Brittany, tell me, how do you get through the day to day? It sounds like every day is a new set of challenges. Talk to me a little bit more about how you kind of manage that, both physically, emotionally, spiritually. What is your routine? What are some of your habits?
some days are better than others. I will say that definitely varies. Um, I totally handle things better some days than others. And I think a big piece of that is just learning to accept that too. That some days just kind of knowing that it's okay to kind of sit in that this is hard. This is, like some days I'm ready to go, like ready to deal with whatever is coming. And then there's other days that like I try not to because I feel this little bit of guilt, like I'm not the one going through it. But then again, I am because he's my child, and you're experiencing it. And to see, your own son having to experience every single day something that's hard is difficult. Um, I am a believer, prayer is a really big, and my faith is something that really carries me, through having those supportive people that do lift me up. That is really, important to me as well. But I just, and even my mom told me once, that's really stuck with me. She said, just don't stay there, like feel it because it's not realistic to be like, oh, I just got to keep going. Like we have to feel those things, but just try not to stay there. And I do my best to not stay there for too long. Some days I do, and then just gotta, the next day keep going. But
Yeah. So,
yeah,
what you're
just
saying is
just
don't try not to get stuck. Feel it, but don't get stuck on it for too long. Find a way, find something to kind of pivot and transfer that energy somewhere else. Brittany, like for people that might have a kiddo with some chronic illness or rare disease, or just maybe it's just unknown, what are some of your outlets? How do you get relief day to day?
Honestly, sometimes it's just talking to somebody else that gets it. I have found community in moms that I've never even met in person. Being able to talk to somebody that understands. And I have some friends that try their very best, and that's never to take away from that. But there is something powerful in a mom or a family member or somebody that has fully understood, that has walked in those same shoes. Now, of course, our stories are different, but that has truly, stayed up all night, experiencing these things, that have had discussions with doctors that you never want to have, that have, gone through those things. And then there's, kind of sillier thing like I'd love to get a cup of coffee, or you know, I should take more walks. I don't. I love to, but I should do more of that. Pedicures. I love pedicures, should do more of that. Things like, kind of I say that like if there's something like that that you love, try to find time. It's hard, I will say. My husband's like, go do it. Just do it. I'm like, but I need to do. I need to do for Isaiah. I need to do for James. He's like, you need to do for you. And it's a struggle.
So talk about that. Let's lean into that a little bit. It's a struggle. It sounds like there are like physical time constraints, right? Like you are on with Isaiah, you are taking him to appointments, therapies, all of the things. But will you elaborate on like what else is the struggle? Because it sounds like it's more than just finding the actual time to do it.
He has a phenomenal nurse who I trust 100%. My husband when he's here and he's, during the day he is at a traditional away from home job. But there's just this piece of me and I feel like I need to be here for everything, like I'm going to miss something and that doesn't always need to be. I say I feel like I've gotten a little bit better, but it's like I need to be. I don't know if it's a maybe it is a control, like I'm the one that, does know what doctor to call or does know, what kind of to do, but there are other people that do know that too. It's just and I will say I think there is, losing my brother was very, very difficult. Losing him and then now having a son, it's like I feel like I need to be there. I don't want something to happen and me not be there. And I think that's a big piece of it. I don't
Yeah.
I just don't wanna miss something. Me just doing something that I really didn't have to do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit more like where like today. How is Isaiah today? Kind of what phase is he in? Obviously that you said it, every day is a roller coaster. So in this present time, how is he?
He's okay. He's like a solid okay. He did get a like I said, in September, he got another kinda chronic, diagnosis that with that, we're figuring out kind of the best we formed a treatment plan, he had a long hospital stay, but with that comes we have to figure out more. He responded really well to that treatment, then coming home, and again, with anything, that first treatment doesn't always work as well, and so we're kind of running into that. Last night, he didn't sleep as well, and so during the day, that kinda spills into the day. So right now, he's sleeping really well. And sometimes that happens, so we just let him, and that's a piece of it too. Like, when he needs to sleep, we just have to let him. He had a long hospital stay, and then he had a surgery, so he's had kind of a lot to that he's still recovering from. So, he's resting very well right now. So, right in this very moment, he's good.
He's good. He's good. And so it sounds like you take those like good moments, you try to hold on to them. You anticipate that something might change, and that's the journey that you're on. Um,
Yeah.
One of the things, as you know, that I'm super passionate about is how supporters and how communities can better show up for moms like you, for families like yours. Obviously, this is a unique circumstance and one that people just by nature aren't equipped to handle. You didn't anticipate being in this role the way you are. And I think supporters don't really know what to do. I think typically If it's a major diagnosis, a cancer or a major event where there's this preamble where you know you're going in for some big treatment or chemo and radiation, and then you come back. Your situation is very different because there's kind of like a constant known that things are just going to be up and down. And so I'm curious, as you've kind of been on this journey, what are the things that you have found particularly valuable and meaningful from the friends and family members that love you?
To start, people checking in, knowing that you are seen really means a lot. Knowing, just that quick text with the understanding that you may not get a response, and I know that meant a lot. Like, "Hey, I'm calling. I don't expect a call back." Just that alone, that acknowledgement meant a lot because it kind of felt like if I don't call them back, they're gonna get upset, and so now just that alone, like, during hospital stays and stuff really helped because it meant a lot to know, "Hey, I'm thinking of you, but please don't feel like you have to call me back." Because again, I think that's, like, when the initial, like, everybody checks in is during hospital stays, of course, and we've had a lot of those. But I will say too, that checking in when you're not in the hospital, I think that now as he had a really long stretch of not being in the hospital, and with a medically complex child, that's, like, enough to be celebrated. You don't want to be in the hospital. But at the same time, that's when you really get, a lot more of the support, but that's not always when like, yes, you need it, and the little bits of, "Hey, I wanna send you, some money for some coffee," or, "Can I bring you some dinner?" or things like that, but in the moments of just being at home, kind of remembering, "Hey, they're still there," really means a lot too, because it doesn't just things don't just go back to like, they do, they go back to our normal, but our normal is it's a lot.
Yeah, and I think you raise a really interesting point though, because supporters tend to be like have a heightened sense of awareness when you're in the hospital, and in some ways, and I hope this isn't taken the wrong way. In some ways, I'd imagine there might be like the degree of difficulty is actually different in the hospital because you have around the clock care, so it's heightened, but there's a like a team. You come home and that team dwindles down to you, and people don't see that. Um, so I think that's a really important just call out in general that just because you're not in a hospital doesn't mean that it's not hard and that it doesn't mean that you don't need support. It just means that we're not in a critical state or there's not a surgery. There's not is that accurate?
I think so, and, I will say, and, I know, like, prior to this, you and I have kind of talked about it, I have a hard time asking for help. I have a hard time, saying someone will say, "What can I do?" I will admit, I'm very easy to be like, "I'm good," you know? But this past month since coming home from that long hospital stay, and then he had a procedure right after, and the recovery from that has been difficult. It's been hard. It's been really, weighing on me a lot. And I would never ask, and we're fine. Something is, and I'm just giving you an example. I love to cook, but a "Hey, let me bring you a meal?" I'm thinking not just of for me, but another family in a similar, like, just that little bit, that would mean a lot. Do we absolutely, like, "Oh my gosh, I can't cook tonight?" But would it be like a little blessing? I think so, like, it has this past month has been weighing on me a lot. So much because this he's had a hard time recovering from this procedure, he's had to be in this brace. Isaiah is non-speaking, but he has a switch that says "all done." As soon as he gets in this brace, he presses "all done." It is so hard as a mom for your child to not even for him to clearly be telling us, "I don't like this. I don't like how this feels to have this on." And it was, all that to say, it's been a struggle. So, yes, it's not been, his health has been stable, but there have been other things going on. So, yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. Like, things are heightened in the hospital, but we do have people checking in all the time. and then we're at home and it's not the case.
Yeah, it dwindles, and I think again, it's just important that we talk about these things because I don't think that it's intentional. I just think people don't know, and unless you're in that situation, you don't realize, if your family's healthy across the board, you don't realize the peaks and the valleys of it all, and that it doesn't always add up to the ER room or the urgent situations, and so I appreciate you being honest about that because in my experience, even supporting and certainly through talking to families like yours, one of my passions for this company and it is really extending the timeline of support, making it easier for people to engage for longer because it's so challenging um, for people to realize that like the support needs to be constant, it needs to be consistent. Brittany, one of the other questions I wanted to ask you that you've mentioned in our previous conversations is that you were a special education teacher. Is that correct?
I was, yep.
How has that kind of like helped or informed just your entire experience?
So I actually chose that profession because of my brother. Kind of experiencing, some difficulties my parents had with his education growing up. I was like, I want to do this, So I say that because I think all of it really helped prepare. None of it fully, but it did really, yeah, nothing fully prepares you for becoming a parent, I think, at all. But especially one with, such such significant medical needs. But it really did, I just overall felt just more prepared, and especially, Isaiah's not in school right now, but kind of going through all of that, one, just the experiences I had with the other students that I had and going through that process with his IEP and, the whole world of disabilities was one that I was so immersed in that I just felt so comfortable in too. And so now, I don't know, it just now having my own son and inclusion is so important in all of that. It just felt like it was, it's always been a part of me. And now, having my own child, it's just fits right into.
I want to ask you a different type of question. What's your one wish for Isaiah?
I just want Isaiah to feel to feel loved and accepted. And, I see if you meet Isaiah, you will know that he understands. Like if you truly, truly pay attention to him. And so many times, if you see somebody that does not have verbal communication, and I've experienced it, working with other children with disabilities and everything, and I don't want him to be overlooked because of that. I don't want even now, he's in a wheelchair and people, "Oh, look at that baby." And I'm like, "He's a 3.5-foot child," And I just want him to feel, because I of course, he's developed, like, I don't know the extent he is developmentally delayed, so when you think about, like, fully what he understands, but I know he understands, and I just want him to feel that, to know that he is so loved, and I know he knows we love him, but just accepted, and that other people see, how incredible he is.
I think that's beautiful. One of the things that I would imagine if someone is a mom like you, maybe earlier in the journey, you talked a little bit earlier about this idea of like grieving the life you thought you would have and still finding joy. It's like almost like what would you have told yourself or someone else that might be at the very beginning of something like this, who might be struggling with that very moment where they realize that life the way they envisioned it is simply not going to be that way.
It's gonna be okay. Like, some things that, like, it is going to be okay, and it's gonna be hard. And I will say I was like I said, I was grieving something so huge at the same time, and then now grieving, when I had 2 boys 13 months apart, I had this whole vision of how things would be. And then things changed and that vision changed. And it took me some time. I didn't want to talk about any of it. I didn't want to, it's not that I didn't want to accept it, but at the same time, I'm like, this is not what I expected. But I think in the same space of, kind of allowing yourself to feel that, like it's okay to kind of feel that. It doesn't make you a bad mom. It doesn't make you,
Yeah.
like it's okay that you are grieving that, I was not expecting this, you know, every prenatal, all the things, there was nothing that was telling us that anything was going to be different with Isaiah. And I will also say 2 other things. Trust your gut. His first seizure was before he was a month old, and the first neurologist we saw did not believe me. And I knew, and she said, "Oh, it's just excessive startle reflux." And I knew what it was. And I will forever advocate for moms and parents and dads too, but like trust, know that and that's as your children get older too, that if you feel something, believe that. And also find community. It took me some time. I was not ready to talk about it at first. I was not ready, to dive into that. But once I did, it has made the biggest difference. And there are people waiting to want, to be there for you, and it makes such a big difference.
I think that's a beautiful place to end. For people, Brittany, that want to support you and follow you and be inspired by your story, the ups and the downs, tell us where they can find you.
I do now have our support now, to have started that. I love sharing, and I will say too that, and early on, I didn't wanna talk about any of it, and sharing our story, really became therapeutic for me. So it took a little bit, and then once I did, primarily started on Instagram, kind of has spread out some, but we do have a page on there that is, a family page that but has become a lot about Isaiah, and I've met a lot of wonderful moms and families on there too, yeah, it's just been amazing. So, there is power in social media. I say there can be, it can not be great sometimes, but there can be some real positive power in it too. So, I'm thankful.
I
Yeah,
completely agree. We'll
yeah.
make sure to both tag your registry, we'll tag your Instagram handle as well. So for anyone that's listening that might be experiencing something similar, and or maybe you know someone that's experiencing something similar and you want to better understand what that looks like and what that feels like, I encourage you to take a look. And as a final note before we sign off, Brittany, first of all, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's such a pleasure and such an honor, honestly, to be able to tell part of your story and to share parts of you that are a little bit more vulnerable in a different setting, certainly than an Instagram story here and there. We are so grateful. And for anyone that wants to support women, families, like Brittany, Support Now is a free resource that allows you to organize all types of community support, whether that be money, meals, volunteers, updates. It's flexible, it's all in one, and families keep more of the money. And our goal is to really provide a free solution that isn't just packed with more functionality, but it's packed with more empathy. And it's a more sincere and compassionate way of serving the families that you love the most. So thank you again, Brittany, for allowing us to have this opportunity
Thank
today.
you.
And I look forward to continuing to for myself to continue on the updates and finding ways that we can support you and Isaiah and your wonderful family.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all that you do and all that Support Now does, and thank you for this opportunity. It's just wonderful getting to know you, and thank you.
Thank you, Brittany.